All right, great. All right, well, thanks for stopping in, everyone. Today's presentation is going to be about making sure your audio and video settings are working properly when you're using Zoom and teaching online generally. Some of it may seem a little basic and some of it may not. And what I've found, and as was pointed out to me recently, sometimes the biggest problem you can have during an online teaching session or anything else are the issues that you didn't even think about being a potential issue. So with that in mind, I'm going to take a quick look at the things we'll be going over today. And I'll try to move at a fairly brisk pace, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. And if you have questions as we go along, you can enter them in the chat, and John or Angelica will keep track of them, and we can move through them at the end. So we'll start with how to test your speakers and microphone on Zoom, and a couple of different ways that you can make sure they're working and hear what is going on. Also, we'll show how to check the actual audio settings on your computer for both Mac and Windows in case there are some underlying things you need to fix before it can work properly in Zoom. Briefly, we'll look at how to test your video and how to adjust a couple of settings there to make sure your students can see you and that you can see them if need be. I'll go over how to make sure you can hear audio while screen sharing if you're sharing a video or something else like that. A couple of points of etiquette for how to handle your audio and video when you're in a group call so to keep things from getting too chaotic. And I'll go over a few other resources and other places that we have resources listed through the LRC to help with this sort of thing. And I'll answer questions at the end. So to start, let's go over the basics of testing your speakers and your microphone on Zoom. And I'm going to do this with screenshots instead of screen share because Zoom hides itself when you screen share, so it makes it harder to demo. But whether you're using a Mac or a PC, when you open a Zoom meeting, you'll see this window. And it'll default to using the computer audio to both send and receive audio. You'll just want to hit that big blue button to start the meeting and have audio. But note this test speaker and microphone link underneath. If you use that, you can make adjustments to your audio before you even enter the meeting. But if you skip it, nothing to worry about. It's easy to get back to if you enter the meeting and find suddenly that things aren't working right. Because when you're in the meeting, and again, Mac or Windows, you'll have this same toolbar here at the bottom in Zoom. Note that next to the microphone, there's this little up arrow, and there are a whole bunch of options that'll be listed there. It'll show any microphone that's connected to your computer, including the built-in one. I have a few extra toys connected to mine, so you'll probably just see same as system and built-in microphone. If you have something connected by USB or something else, that'll show up there too. Same thing with the speakers. Despite my extra toys, what you will most likely see is the built-in output, which will either say internal speakers or headphones if you have those plugged in. And then there are a few other things down here. There's that test speaker and microphone again, and a little link called audio settings, which we'll come back to in a minute. First, we're going to look at the testing for your speaker and your microphone. First thing you'll see is this window. It'll ask if you hear a ringtone, and you'll see this little meter moving, and probably, if your speakers are working correctly, you'll hear a very pleasant sort of musical ring. If you don't hear it, note it lists all the speakers that might be connected or you might be using, and you can select any of them from the drop down there. So if the one you have selected isn't working, you can try a different one. Again, you probably won't have that many options. You may just have your built-in speakers as an option. So if you say no, it'll give you some helpful tips like I'm doing right now. If you say yes, it'll just move you on to the next test, which is for your microphone. Same deal. It lists how many you have connected, a drop down so that you can select one. And if you speak, say something short like test 1, 2, you should see the input. And if your microphone is picking up sound, you'll hear it played back to you in a second or two. Again, if you're not getting that, make sure you look at what options you have, try maybe a different one. It can give you some choices for what to do if you can't get any sound to come in. But if all goes well, you'll be able to click yes, and you'll be in good shape. So what if you're not in good shape? There are a few things you can do. Remember back here, one of the options at the bottom of this list next to the microphone, when you click this up arrow, is audio settings. If you click that, it takes you to this page, and this lets you do all the testing, but also it'll let you adjust the volume of your speaker and your microphone. And you may find if your microphone's not working normally, it may be that your input volume is just turned all the way down. Same thing with being able to hear other people. That volume adjustment can make a big deal. Also, if you can hear yourself, but you sound distorted or garbled, sometimes if your microphone is turned up too loud, it will distort. Now, if you're using your built-in microphone, Zoom does have an option to automatically adjust the settings. That may be useful for you if you're having trouble regularly with people hearing you, but you shouldn't need to do that once you find a setting that works. A few other options here. They're mostly more advanced things, but good to know if there are certain audio things you're having. If you want to be muted automatically when you join, those will apply across all your meetings. Okay, but let's say none of that works. You've exhausted the options in Zoom, and you really need to know how to see if there's a problem with the audio on your computer. Let's back out of this for a second, and I'm going to show you how that works on both Windows and Mac. Okay. So you're on a Mac. Here's your desktop. Here's how you get to your audio settings. If you go up to the Apple in your top toolbar, System Preferences will probably be the second one down. If you click that, you'll see this big pane with a lot of icons. Look for the speaker that says Sound. Here, similar to the settings pane in Zoom, you can select different devices for your output, the speakers, or your input, the microphone. And you can see here it's measuring the input level, and I can make adjustments to the volume for either one. And that way, if everything seems to be working normally and Zoom's not doing the trick, this is a better spot to look if things are really getting wacky. And you may go here and see that there's some issue that Zoom wasn't investigating. So always good to know how to check on that. Hopefully you won't need to do it, but it's a good place to start. If you're on Windows, it's a little different. Stand by. So here's what a Windows user might see. All right. Isn't that cute? I like to just search for sound and spell it correctly in the search bar down there near the start menu. That'll give you sound settings. And there you'll see much the same thing. You can choose your speakers or your microphone, output and input, and adjust the volume of each. There's also links that it will automatically troubleshoot either of those. So that's what I recommend if you're on Windows and really having some trouble. Those are places you can look. If you're waiting for someone from IT to come and help you, or if you don't want to have to call someone else, some ways that you can deal with those issues on your own. Always good to feel empowered with those things. All right, let's resume. All right, quickly, I'll just go over video. There's not as much to worry about there because you don't have to do the same number of, can you hear me now runarounds then. But note that next to the little camera icon down there in your bottom toolbar, you get similar options. I'm only using the built-in camera, as many of you will, but if you have an external webcam connected to your machine, that will show up there too. So make sure you have the one that's actually pointed at your face that you want to be using. Again, you have an extra settings option on that menu, and that'll take you to something like this. Not too much you should have to adjust here, but if your video is looking out of proportion, if you don't want your video to turn on ever without you saying so in a meeting, if you don't want people who aren't in your class on video to show up in your screen, there's some options here to deal with, and this is a good place to go if you're having video issues. So that's it for the basics of audio and video. Something I have had a few people ask me about is how to share AV content in a class. The screen sharing in Zoom is pretty straightforward. You all have a screen share button down in the middle of your taskbar. But what a lot of people don't know is that there's this little share computer sound checkbox on the screen share window. And if you don't check that, whatever you show, whether it's an app or a video or anything like that, no audio will come across. You have to select that in order to broadcast audio over Zoom. So if you want to share a video in the middle of your class, make sure that's checked before you click share. I will say, unless there's a really compelling reason to do it, I don't recommend streaming a video synchronously during an online class. It can put extra pressure on everyone's bandwidth, and you may have people seeing more video dropout or audio issues than usual. Normally, I'd recommend having the students view the video from Canvas or something like that before or after the class. But if you need to broadcast audio to everyone during your class for some reason, that's where that is. So now that we know how to fix and set up our audio, here are a few points of etiquette, because it's easy to not realize with everything else going on that sometimes your audio on an online video conference is causing some disturbances. The biggest tool at your disposal is the ability to mute your microphone and for your students to mute their microphones. And you'll see it's on that microphone icon in the bottom left. Know it, love it. My general rule of thumb, if you're in a class or a meeting on Zoom or any other video conference platform, if you're not speaking, mute that microphone. More on that in a second. Headphones are also, I think, a crucial tool, because otherwise, if you're putting your audio over speakers, what can happen a lot is that the audio will bounce back through your microphone and you'll get echoes and feedback. Using headphones helps you stay focused on the audio of everyone else speaking, and also keeps the distractions at a minimum. It's important to be aware of what sounds you're making. And this goes back to why microphone muting is so important. Zoom doesn't play your audio back to you, so you don't necessarily know what other people are hearing. That's less distracting for you when you're speaking, but it often means that you're can be a little negligent about what's going on around you that you're tuning out and your students can't. Where was I going with that? Basically, we've all been in meetings or have the danger of being in meetings where people have dogs barking in the background and you can hear every tap on your keyboard and every squeak of your chair. It's important to be aware of what's going on around you so that you're not sharing that with everyone on the meeting. And the more people who are in it, the more chaotic that becomes when if you all have microphones open. So that's why it's important to be muted if you're not making noises. You don't want to become a square on conference call bingo, which we've all experienced, and causes distractions and gets in the way of a peaceful learning environment. If you can keep your mouse poised in that mute switch, it'll make everything less distracting and smoother for everybody. So that's my big, my message, my bit of wisdom for all of you. So there's a lot more in depth we can get with this sort of thing. for today, I'm just going to direct you to our special COVID-19 preparedness page on the Language Resource Center website. We have a lot more videos and cheat sheets and other documentation there. We have information on more webinars coming up, all sorts of things where you can dive deeper on how to make sure your audio is working the way you need it to, how to make sure you're getting your information across and communicating clearly with your students. And we're also here to answer questions, both in the future or right now. So that's all I have for you, but I'm happy to take any questions that you might have now.
So we did have one question online here.
Okay.
So if I play the sound file that is included in a PowerPoint slide, do I still need to click that share computer sound for better sound?
Yes, if you don't click that, no sound embedded in the PowerPoint will make it across. So yes, if there's any sound in your presentation or any sound at all that you need to get over Zoom that's not coming through your microphone, make sure you click that box before you share.
Got it. Any other questions about audio, sound? Misa, you raised your hand. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask more questions? Maybe not.
No pressure. Well, again, we're here. We have drop-in hours scheduled. Oh, go ahead.
Hang on.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself.
Oh.
I was asking questions and I was like, oh, right, what, how come? Okay, anyway. The other day I tried to run this with some of my students, volunteer, and I noticed that all the video photos of them, their face, comes to the right side of my screen. Then I tend to talk to them while looking at them. So
right.
From their side, it seems that I'm always looking, somewhere else, not to them. So how do I bring their photo to the, facing me to the front row or something? How can I?
Sure. So every individual participant can adjust the way they see those other meeting members, and it won't affect anyone else's view. So here, let me stop the share here. And this is tricky. I wish I could screen share this with you, but again, I can't screen share Zoom on Zoom. But if you hover over those images, you should see there are a few different little boxes. There's an icon with one box that if you hover over it says show small active speaker window. There's one that says show thumbnail video. I'm not sure if I'm talking you through that effectively. But you can drag the boxes of any of the students around your screen to show up where they are. And this may be something that we can go over offline since there's not really an effective way for me to demo it on the call. But since you're doing what comes natural and looking at your students, but for them, what makes for the most realistic feeling of eye contact is when you look directly at the camera instead of at the picture of them. So yeah, setting up the video boxes in a way where it's near the center or top of your screen is helpful for that. Let me see if I have a quick.
I like what I see right now on the screen that you can see each student's face really in a bigger picture, and I wonder how to do it.
Yeah. Well, maybe I can, one of the things I can add in our resources on our webpage is a video or some screenshots of me showing the different ways you can set up your gallery of students. But the biggest thing that I can give you for right now is, even if it's not where your student is on the screen, if you're talking to them, looking at your camera is what will give them that feeling of eye contact. And that is important. It helps them feel connected and less like they're watching a video and more like you're
Right.
speaking to them.
Okay, thank you.
And I think this is particularly important if you have online office hours. You know, then it's one-on-one, so it's going to be much easier to just focus on the student because you're not toggling back and forth between multiple students.
Right.
I think if you think about your regular face-to-face class, you don't always look into every individual student's face, right? But I think that's something we need to keep in mind. We're trying our best to make the online environment engaging, but we will not be able to replicate the exact face-to-face environment. So if sometimes you just look on, like they see you, you know, slightly looking at them from the side or whatever, that's fine too. I mean, don't get bogged down by the technology. Always keep your pedagogy in the forefront. Think about what you actually want to accomplish, and whether or not you look perfectly centered into the camera is really secondary.
Okay. Thank you.
Sam, can you go back to the share screen settings in Zoom?
Yes.
Where was the share button?
So normally it'll be in the share button is in the middle of that toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Now, while I was sharing, you wouldn't see that. But I believe this meeting is set up so that people who aren't the host can share. So you may be able to see it now. If not, when you are hosting a meeting for your class, it'll be a big green button right in the middle. And let me show you that. Oh, yeah, there we go.
Oh, yeah, so you found it. Good
you got it.
Yep.
So yeah, probably you couldn't see it while I was sharing my screen because only one person's allowed to share at a time.
Yeah. And you have control over whether or not you want to allow your students to share so that they don't just start sharing their screens while you're in the middle of, you know, sharing a presentation or something like that. Are there any other questions, either about setting up audio and video or about anything else while we're all gathered here today?
All right. Well, if you think of anything else or anyone you're talking to, student or teacher, has other questions, you can get them in touch with us. The recording of this webinar will be up on our website on that COVID-19 preparedness page. And again, we have a long list of bite-sized resources there that can help you out. And we're happy to answer questions and do one-on-ones as well.
And if I can jump in again for one other piece of information. So right now the webinar series focuses on more of the basics. How do you get set up? How do you get started? Starting toward the end of next week, we will focus more on how do you engage students? How do you help them in this online environment? And then we will move to a third stage with the webinars where we focus more on assessments and things like that. So there was one other question real quick here. Is it possible for students to share their screens? Yes, that is. It depends on how you set up Zoom and what permissions you give to your students. So sometimes it might be important for them to share the screen because they may want to share an assignment with you or something. Or if you put them into breakout rooms, they can then share their screens with one another. We will be talking about some of those additional features in webinars next week. So if there are any specific questions, join us then, or as Sam mentioned, just set up a one-on-one meeting with us or drop in during our open drop-in times on Zoom.
I wouldn't, I'm just seeing one more question pop up in the chat. I wouldn't worry about the phone audio choice. The only time that would come up is if someone is unable to connect on a computer and instead is using the dial-in option where you call into the Zoom meeting from a regular phone number. All the Zoom meeting invitation information that's included when you start a meeting has that in it. It shouldn't come up for a regular class use, but if you have one or two students who have issues connecting, that may be an option. It's audio only. Normally, when you're hosting from a computer, it's not something you'll have to be concerned about. All right. Anything else before we go? All right. Well, thank you everyone very much. And again, keep in touch, and we're here to help.